They said the truth died with him. But what if it never did? Before that haunting April morning in 2016, when the world lost Prince, the legend, the mystery, the genius, whispers say he was on the verge of something far bigger than music. Something dangerous. Something that could have shattered the perfect image of hip-hop royalty, Jay-Z and Beyoncé. And now, years later, that ghost is back. Insiders claim that the very files Prince had been compiling, files that were supposedly buried, deleted, erased from existence, are beginning to leak again. Imagine that. Every encrypted drive they thought they destroyed, every whispered conversation they paid to silence, somehow, it is all creeping back to life. And the Carters? Reportedly panicking. Because if even one piece of that evidence is real, it could unravel everything. Social media is on fire. Conspiracy threads are spinning out of control. Some users claim they have seen fragments, a few cryptic file names, a glimpse of old contracts, hidden behind anonymous accounts. Others believe someone close to Prince's circle held on to his files, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And that moment might be now. Right when Diddy's empire is collapsing in court, piece by piece. The timing is not just strange, it feels surgical. Was this planned? Or is it karma finally catching up? When Prince died, the world was told it was an accident, a tragic, lonely ending for a man who gave his soul to music. But what came next blurred every line between business and betrayal. Because only months before his death, Prince had made a decision that changed everything. He had entrusted Jay-Z's streaming platform, Tidal, with some of his most precious recordings, believing Jay's promise to protect artists' rights. It looked like a partnership built on respect, but after his death, it began to look more like a takeover. Prince had left no will. And that silence became a battlefield. His estate accused Tidal and Roc Nation of backdating paperwork, allegedly trying to claim hundreds of songs that were never even authorized. Court filings painted a picture of chaos, of corporate hands clawing through his vault, acting as if his entire musical legacy already belonged to them. It was not just about ownership. It was about power, control, and perhaps, the secrets buried beneath those songs. And now, as rumors of hidden files re-emerge, one question burns brighter than ever: who has them now? And what do they plan to do with them? By 2017, the story took a darker turn, not in courtrooms this time, but through lyrics. Jay-Z had done what he always did best, turn real-life chaos into music. His album 444 dropped like a confession and a warning all at once. Hidden between bars and metaphors was a shot fired, aimed straight at Prince's estate. "I sat down with Prince, eye to eye," he rapped, claiming the legend had trusted him, confided in him before his passing. It was not just a lyric, it was a declaration. A way of drawing a line between himself and the lawyers now handling Prince's legacy. But the line he drew did not settle the feud. It carved it into public memory. Lawyers fired back, accusing Jay-Z's companies of fabricating documents, backdating contracts, and manipulating the narrative. Emails and legal statements painted two conflicting realities, one where Jay-Z was the loyal friend honoring a promise, and another where he was the businessman rewriting history. Somewhere between those stories lay the truth, buried deep inside Prince's mysterious vault, the same vault that billionaires were now quietly at war over. Then came the whispers that turned the music world cold. Reports claimed Jay-Z had flown Prince's sister, Tyka, to New York in a private meeting. Sources close to those talks said he offered $40 million to buy the entire catalog outright, a staggering number, yet strangely low for control over decades of unreleased art. And that made people wonder, what else was in there? What was hidden behind those purple doors that could make $40 million sound like pocket change? Industry insiders started talking about things far beyond unreleased tracks. They spoke of notes, letters, and personal documentation, files where Prince had allegedly recorded his suspicions about major executives, rival artists, and their off-record dealings. Among the names whispered in hushed tones? Jay-Z, Beyoncé, and others whose fame seemed untouchable. None of it has ever been proven, but the pattern is hard to ignore. Every person who has ever tried to control Prince's legacy has ended up caught in something bigger than a copyright battle. It always turns into a storm of manipulation, greed, and betrayal. Jay-Z's defenders call it business, just business, but when you trace the timeline, the picture that emerges is something else entirely. It is the story of a man who built his empire with the same ruthless instinct he once survived on in the streets. The court documents, the contracts, the headlines, they all point back to the same energy. The same hunger. The same edge that once made him dangerous. Because long before Jay-Z became the billionaire mogul we know today, his story was written in darker ink. In 1999, he pleaded guilty to stabbing producer Lance Rivera during a dispute over a bootleg album. He walked away with probation. 2 years later, police found a loaded weapon in a car outside a Manhattan club. His bodyguard took the blame, and Jay-Z walked free again. And in old interviews, he has admitted what everyone already knew: his first fortune came from the corners of Brooklyn, from a life that taught him risk, loyalty, and survival at any cost. He turned that past into legend, into mythology. But the aggression never really disappeared. It simply evolved. It moved from the streets to boardrooms, from fistfights to lawsuits. And by the mid-2010s, Jay-Z had rebranded himself into the face of ambition, a clean-cut visionary, standing beside his wife Beyoncé, the queen of perfection. Together, they crafted an image of absolute control. Power without dirt. Fame without flaws. Which is why the Prince battle cut so deep. It threatened to crack the illusion. To reveal a side of Jay-Z the public was never meant to see, the side accused of forging documents, exploiting grief, and turning an artist's death into corporate opportunity. Court records claim that after Prince's death, Tidal streamed more than 15 albums of his music, including works he had never approved for release. To the estate, it was theft. To Jay-Z, it was tribute. But in the courtroom, tribute is just another word for ownership. And when the estate's lawyers demanded answers, Tidal's defense suddenly hid behind legal shields, invoking something called the common interest doctrine. A fancy term that meant their internal emails could remain secret. That decision alone made investigators suspicious. It was as if someone had locked the vault twice. From the outside, it stopped looking like a misunderstanding, and started looking like a cover-up gone wrong. But while that storm raged, another was quietly building. This time around, it was not about contracts, it was about corruption. Sean Diddy Combs, the same man who once threw those infamous white parties where Jay-Z and Beyoncé were regular guests, was now being accused of something far darker. Federal filings described Diddy's empire as a web of coercion and control, built on secrecy and fear. According to prosecutors, those lavish parties were not just parties. They were stages, choreographed events where encounters were recorded, stored, and allegedly used as leverage. Former insiders claimed Diddy kept entire archives of these private performances, hidden away like insurance policies. And when you look at that pattern, the control, the recordings, the manipulation, the idea that someone like Prince might have collected evidence on it all no longer sounds crazy. Prince never trusted the industry. He had seen too much, heard too much. If he did have files connecting Diddy's alleged operations to others in his orbit, even to Jay-Z and Beyoncé, then his death takes on a chilling new light. Because multiple lawsuits now mention both of their names, tied to the same early 2000s party circles where boundaries blurred and power ruled. And just like that, a story once about music and legacy begins to look more like a labyrinth of blackmail, betrayal, and buried secrets. And the haunting question remains, was Prince trying to expose it all before the lights went out? He called it blackmail, brushed it off like just another rumor in the chaos of fame. But the pattern is impossible to ignore. Every time the storm starts circling, Jay-Z's lawyers appear like clockwork, armed with statements, denials, and carefully rehearsed alibis. They point to timelines, to appearances, to flight records. They tell the world, there's no connection. And yet, gossip circles do not believe in coincidences. Not when Diddy's empire is collapsing under federal indictments. Not when alleged Prince files, long thought erased, are suddenly finding their way back online. If these two stories truly have nothing to do with each other, it would be one of the strangest coincidences in modern music history. But if they are connected, even by a single thread, then what is happening now could explain everything. Why Beyoncé's team has reportedly begun monitoring every leak site that mentions Prince's name. Why NDAs are being quietly handed out like shields. Why the most powerful couple in the world suddenly looks nervous. Because Prince's vault was never just a vault. It was legend. Myth. A labyrinth of tapes, videos, journals, and handwritten letters stacked floor to ceiling inside Paisley Park. People who have been inside say it was like walking through his mind, decades of genius sealed in silence. But according to those who worked on the estate's catalog project, not everything inside was musical. Some described sealed envelopes marked with personal initials. Others spoke of digital drives labeled with symbols only Prince understood. One former advisor hinted that certain materials were sensitive, never intended for public eyes or ears. When the Universal distribution deal collapsed amid legal confusion, those items reportedly changed hands multiple times. Somewhere in that chaos, files vanished. And that is where the newest rumor begins. A fresh batch of digital archives, allegedly stolen during early audits, has surfaced again, circulating in encrypted corners of the internet. The whispers claim those files link business empires, secret recordings, and private leverage across the same web of celebrities now being dragged into court. If that is true, then this stopped being about music long ago. It is no longer a feud over streaming rights, it is a war for reputation, influence, and survival. The kind of battle fought in silence, behind closed doors, while smiling for the cameras. Insiders claim the Carters have quietly reached out to several of Prince's old associates, offering them consulting positions, with strict confidentiality agreements attached. Some say it is damage control. Others believe it is fear. Either way, one thing is clear: something inside that vault is making powerful people sweat. Every week brings a new whisper about encrypted drives, shadow investigators, and documents tying Roc Nation to Diddy's circles. None of it has been proven, but it refuses to die. Too many insiders are talking. Too many leaks are aligning. And somewhere in all of it lies a terrifying detail that few are willing to acknowledge: the missing catalog numbers. When the estate finished its first inventory, a handful of entries from the old manifest were gone. Not labeled as songs, not marked as videos, just miscellaneous media. That is what everyone is hunting now. The non-musical files. The ones that could explain why people who once praised Prince now act like they never knew him at all. As prosecutors dig deeper into Diddy's empire, the case unfolding in court reads less like a lawsuit and more like the script of a psychological thriller. Investigators describe a system, one that was organized, deliberate, and disturbingly efficient. Assistants arranged private flights under false names. Entire hotel floors were rented for events that blurred entertainment and intimidation. The evidence list reads like something out of a fever dream: bundles of cash transfers, shipments of pharmaceuticals, and what the indictments call multimedia documentation. Raids in Los Angeles and Miami reportedly uncovered hard drives, hidden cameras, and more than 1,000 bottles of lubricant, a detail that tabloids turned into late-night jokes. But prosecutors insist those bottles are evidence, proof that everything was cataloged, indexed, and used as leverage. Diddy denies all of it. He says it is a witch hunt, that the stories will collapse under scrutiny. But inside the industry, the fear is real. Because the deeper the investigation goes, the more names surface. Artists. Executives. Icons. In one civil filing that briefly exploded across headlines, both Jay-Z and Beyoncé were listed as potential witnesses, attendees of a Diddy-hosted event decades ago. Within days, that same filing was quietly amended, and their names vanished like ghosts erased from the record. Jay-Z's attorney wasted no time. He told reporters that the rapper was not even in Florida at the time, pointing to public appearances in New York that same week. It was a polished denial, but also a perfect illustration of the Carters' strange reality. Their names appear, then vanish. Mentioned, then redacted. Every trace followed by silence, every accusation smothered by legal precision. And that silence, that pattern, is exactly what has the internet obsessed. Because every time the Carters disappear from a story, the story itself only gets louder. They call it the fastest cleanup operation in the industry, a machine that moves quicker than any scandal can breathe. To some, it proves innocence. To others, it is the very definition of panic, the kind of panic that only shows when a secret cuts too close to home. Inside circles are whispering something even darker now. The latest leaks, the ones quietly circling the Carters' names, may not be coming from the courts or journalists at all. They might be coming from Prince himself. Not literally, of course, but from the investigation he began before his death. A private project that few knew existed, one that insiders claim was meant to expose industry exploitation, backroom deals, and hidden power structures among the most influential figures in music. Prince was not just making art, he was collecting evidence. And when he died, what he left behind was not merely a vault, it was a black box. And according to those who handled it, copies of that archive existed outside Paisley Park. Quiet backups. Encrypted, duplicated, and scattered across unknown servers. Now, the rumor is that fragments of those backups, emails, handwritten notes, possibly even videos, are resurfacing. If that is true, it would explain why billionaires are suddenly trying to buy silence in places that cannot be traced. Because this is no longer about legacy or music rights. This is about self-preservation. Jay-Z's image makeover in the years after Prince's death now looks almost strategic in hindsight, a masterclass in rebranding. For 44 was hailed as his confession album, a reflective rebirth where he preached ownership, transparency, and emotional maturity. But behind the curtain, court filings told a colder story. Prince's label, NPG Records, accused Tidal of backdating equity contracts to justify streaming over 500 unreleased tracks. Prosecutors pointed out inconsistencies, emails that did not match the so-called agreements, timestamps that made no sense. It directly contradicted the tale Jay-Z told his fans, that he was carrying out Prince's final wishes. To the public, it sounded noble, poetic, even. To the lawyers, it looked like manipulation. Prince had spent his life defying corporate ownership, even writing "slave" on his face in open rebellion. Jay-Z, meanwhile, had turned ownership into an empire. One man fought to escape control, the other built a business model out of it. Their feud was not about philosophy, it was a battle for power and the right to define legacy. And that tension echoes eerily with what is unfolding around Diddy. Both men, titans of the same generation, built empires on charisma, money, and connections. Both now stand under shadows cast by the same collapsing network. As federal investigators unravel Diddy's money trails, they are discovering a web that stretches across decades of hip-hop's elite, a social circle now rotting from within. Insiders claim that blackmail materials, recordings from those infamous, extravagant parties, have been circulating in silence for years. Clips were traded for favors. Evidence was hidden for access. Entire careers were protected in exchange for erasure. And Prince, ever the skeptic of corporate systems, reportedly warned his closest confidants that artists were being owned in ways the public could not yet see. Maybe he meant the contracts. Maybe he meant the recordings. Either way, his words have become prophecy. Because now, when you look at how fiercely the Carters protect their image, the lawsuits, the media takedowns, the public relations precision, the puzzle starts to fit together. Earlier this year, a popular talk show host issued a trembling apology after airing an interview with a former collaborator who made disturbing allegations about Jay-Z and Beyoncé's alleged ties to Diddy. Within days, the Carters' legal team stepped in, demanding the footage be removed, the episode re-edit, and the claims retracted. The host complied. The segment vanished. The apology stayed. That kind of instant reversal does not happen often in modern media. It revealed just how swiftly and silently the Carter machine operates, and how far they will go to stop a spark before it becomes a fire. Behind the scenes, producers whisper about the same thing, that they have been warned off pursuing stories connecting the couple to the ongoing federal scandal. Every cut clip, every scrubbed headline, every deleted tweet deepens the mystery. Meanwhile, in the darker corners of the internet, something else is spreading, fragments of what some claim are the missing Prince files. Anonymous accounts post encrypted drives said to contain communications between moguls, private financial logs, and footage from high-profile events. Nothing is verified. Nothing stays up for long. Each time a file surfaces, it disappears again within hours, but not before screenshots ignite entire threads of speculation. Tracing the leaks leads investigators to one troubling realization: many of these files seem to have originated from individuals who worked for Prince's estate during its most chaotic year, the year right after his death. Some of those individuals, records show, were quietly rehired later by major labels with direct connections to Roc Nation. If those links are legitimate, it means parts of Prince's archive were dispersed before lawyers could ever secure them. And that is where this story stops being tabloid gossip, and starts becoming dangerous. Because the same federal teams now dismantling Diddy's alleged operation are reviewing communications from several high-ranking figures in the entertainment world. Executives, artists, financiers, anyone whose name appears in those digital intersections. And in those files may lie something explosive, not just what Prince saw, but what he saved. The walls are closing in. And the question echoing across social media tonight is,